Today, I want to talk about size inclusivity. What is it? How do brands achieve it? Standard sizing versus made to measure, the pros and cons of size inclusivity, and how size inclusivity fits within the sustainable and ethical fashion narrative. This video kicks off my series about fatness and fashion, where I give you an insider perspective on what it's like being fat within the fashion industry. I'm going to do a more extensive video around fatphobia and fashion because I have a lot to say. But I thought size inclusivity was a good way to kind of get stuck in. And so before we dive into size inclusivity, I also want to quickly touch on standard sizing. If you want a more extensive history on standard sizing and how we got here, I really recommend Mina Lee's video, Why is it so hard to find clothes that fit? I will add the link to my description. But basically, I don't want to parrot what she says. This video is not about the history of standard sizing or how we got here. What I want to talk about is the solution to standard sizing's problems and highlight why standard sizing will never work from an industry perspective. I'll give you a brief introduction to that history just so you have context going forward. But like I said, this video is mainly going to be defining what size inclusivity is, how it goes hand in hand with the biases the fashion industry has against fat people. So in brief, the reason why we have standard sizing is because of war. The industrial military complex strikes again. I'm joking. I'm gonna read my notes off of my phone because I'm just so terrible at remembering what wars they are. So the Napoleonic Wars, the Crimean War, and the American Civil War required unprecedented numbers of uniforms. Like, they required so many, which is really sad actually when you think about it, because so many men were going to war. And so because of this, full body sizing systems, standard sizing, was starting to be developed. And then gradually, the mass production of uniforms transformed into the production of ready-to-wear clothing. Men's fashion adopted standard sizing quite quickly, but women's wear kind of was not so fast to abandon its close body fitting practices. And this was usually because women at the time of the early 19th century were wearing corsets. So everyone's measurements were really different because they were all wearing different corsets. Obviously, a corset is constructed to be much smaller than your actual body measurements. And that's a different thing. Already constructed clothes were not available because women were still wearing very tight corsets, which altered their shape a lot. Then women's wear started to adopt the mass production of ready-wear items. It went through a few variations. Different countries had different sizing, and that's still kind of relevant today. But there was a global standard in 1946 by the International Organization for Standardization. That's a mouthful. And the sizing systems were starting to be developed in 1969. And now we have the system we have today, which is basically impossible to navigate. You go into a store and you're one size, you go into another and you're another size. Like, you don't have a set size, even though you're told by the fashion industry that you should have one size and it should correlate between all stores. Okay, so let's get into why standard sizing can never really happen and why you going into one store and having one size and going into another and having another is actually always going to be the case if we continue with standard sizing. Part 1, size inclusivity is when. I once had a comment that said made to measure clothing is not the answer to size inclusivity, and I remember reading that at the time and going, huh? Like, I couldn't wrap my head around that thinking. Like, why wouldn't tailor-made garments be the answer to clothes not fitting? I was never given an answer by that person, but a year and a half later, I feel like maybe I have some theories onto why they said that. First, though, I should get into what size inclusivity actually is and what I think it should mean, because there are a lot of definitions for it, depending on who you ask. And I know that this video is going to annoy a couple of people. Size inclusivity is when a brand offers a wide range of clothing in a broad spectrum of sizes, making the same styles available to everyone regardless of size, shape, body type. This approach moves away from a traditional model where smaller sizes are standard and larger sizes are offered as separate collections, instead of integrating all the sizes into a single collection with consistent pricing. It makes sense, but let me make it better with my version. Size inclusivity is when a brand offers a range of clothing which is made to fit the client's measurements. So why made to measure? Because there is never going to be one standard. Let's be absolutely real for a moment. There will never be a universal size chart because there is not a universal set of bodies. Bodies range from country to country, they change by economic factors, environmental factors, the list goes on. There is no such thing as a standard body. And we know that standard sizing was developed originally for military demand, but it ended up being a capitalistic venture. And before we had that, guess what? Made to measure. So problem number one, no universal set of bodies. Problem number two, each brand will have a different fit model. A fit model is basically a model that will be used by brands to set their standard sizing. So my fit model for my larger sizes is myself because I'm available. I exploit myself for my brand. And I have an hourglass figure. And if you look at my size guide, have similar hourglass measurements where the waist is much smaller than the bust and the hips. Some brands will use a straight size model where the bust, waist and hips are similar in measurements. If you shop from my brand and then from the other, then you will naturally have two different sizes and the clothes will fit you differently. And that's not at the fault of your body. You can't be expected to just change your body at a will just so that you can shop in a particular store. It is an industry norm to have a fit model. I mean, a fit model is really a live mannequin. Before we had standard sizing, a fit model would have been used to just make sure that the darts are in the right place, all of that, like it's fitting properly essentially. And that if it was made for another woman, then we'd know where to move the darts to fit her properly or stuff like that. Like a fit model is basically a live mannequin. We can see the clothes move, we can see how it works with the body. Because obviously a mannequin stays still. I can't magic a mannequin to come to life. I need a real body to see how my clothes work. So usually I am my own fit model because I'm here in the studio already. So if you were an hourglass, then my standard sizing would fit you great. But if you were to wear something from the other brand, which is more straight sizing, then their standard sizing will be off. And even if you were to lose weight, you can't change your bone structure. So now we have highlighted two problems. Problem number three to standard sizing is accessibility. Part 3, the fast fashion industry is gaslighting the plus size community. So I see a lot of articles written by plus size influencers and the title will be 25 of the best size inclusive brands of 2025 or something like that. And I want to say most of the brands that are platformed within this article, like 60% of them maybe, are fast fashion or they just carry the odd size 28. And that is great that a big fast fashion brand is carrying a size 28 during this time of heroin chic. But is it really? Because for me, my mind goes to, okay, so they have the size, but is that size accessible? If I go into any store, will that size be there? Are all your styles available in that size? Do they actually fit properly? Have these sizes been scaled up from the thin fit model that you used for the smaller sizes? Or do they have their own fit model? How much stock do you have of this size? Do you only have the size in certain colors, etc, etc, etc? A brand is not size inclusive because they have a couple of styles in size 28. That is still disproportionate to smaller sizes. It is not equal and therefore not inclusive. And I also just want to take this moment to say that size inclusivity, again, is not just for fat people. It's also for people on the petite end who are extra, extra small or extra, extra, extra small. However, they still have access to the larger clothing and can get it tailored down. Someone at a size 28 cannot tailor clothing that is smaller. I also want to point out that I find calling fast fashion brands size inclusive just another kick in the teeth to the garment workers who actually make them. Why are we praising brands for liking one minority and hating another? Why would I, a queer disabled fat woman, want clothes in my size made by a woman of color or a girl who is being paid on average $100 to $200 a month and are working on average 18 hours a day, sleeping on the floor of factories and just barely surviving? Like, why are we celebrating the fact that they have a couple of size 28s when that's what they're doing behind doors? As a minority, you should want to stand with all of those who are oppressed. I mean, just as a human being, you'd want to stand with other human beings that are being oppressed. Maybe I'm just thinking too black and white in that case, but I just can't wrap my head around it. Sorry. So anyway, back to size inclusivity. So rather than these articles platforming actual size inclusive brands, to which I will pop some amazing brands down in the description for you. Obviously you can shop from me, but there are so many brands who are doing so well in size inclusivity. People in our own community are mainly platforming fast fashion brands in these types of articles. These articles leave you to believe that on the surface level, these brands are size inclusive because you don't have the tools or the insider knowledge to question what size inclusivity means. I feel like we are getting there with sustainable and ethical fashion. I see a lot of consumers pushing brands around, you know, who are their garment workers, where their materials come from, etc. But I don't really see the same for size inclusivity. I only see an uproar if the size has been removed full stop, which I mean is a valid reason to get upset. But you shouldn't settle for the bare minimum anyway. You shouldn't just go, oh, they have my size. Cool. That's size inclusive, because it's not. And the thing is, I don't expect people to ask those questions because for our lifetime, standard sizing has been the norm. Clothes sometimes fit you, sometimes they don't, even if it's the same size. It's been this carousel of, oh, I just suppose that's how it is for so long now. This is where it's down to industry professionals like me to tell you and to educate you, because not only has standard sizing stolen our dignity when it comes to clothes, it has stolen our knowledge. Part 3. Actually, there are cons to size inclusivity. Because standard sizing is the norm now, we don't value sewing skills as something everyone needs. You know, the basics: hem a skirt, take in a waist, add a button, add a dart, etc. And this is where it actually highlights a problem with size inclusivity. Of course, getting tailor-made clothes is a privilege. Back in the olden times, the rich would go to a tailor and get a new wardrobe for the year ahead, all made to their exact measurements. I mean, you've seen men in period dramas go for suit fittings. The modiste in Bridgerton, that's what it would have been like. Probably the only historical aspect of Bridgerton. I jest. But what about the working class? Well, they would have had basic sewing skills. They would rework hand-me-downs, a dress into some children's wear, for example. They had no choice but to sew patches into holes, darn socks, cover a stain with embroidery. They couldn't afford a tailor, so they had to have the necessary skills. And even now, made-to-measure is not accessible for all, because it is a service you have to invest in. But what's different now is that basic sewing skills have been stripped away from most of the working class. I do offer made to measure at no extra cost. I don't even build it into my pricing. It is time I give for free. And this is because I want people to have more access to it. Now, there are some that will argue that sustainable fashion is not attainable for all. And this is where we get into very murky waters within that debate. Sustainable fashion is attainable, just not at the same level as fast fashion. You know, sustainable fashion doesn't just mean new things. It doesn't mean things made of cotton or things made of linen. It's secondhand, it's vintage, it's upcycling, it's all of this kind of stuff, which a lot of it is about having basic sewing skills. But in short, fast fashion has ruined our perception of what clothing should cost and how many garments we should own personally. Another con to size inclusivity is representation, especially as a small brand. Looking on my site, it might be difficult to tell that I am size inclusive if I don't explicitly tell you, because I model all my clothing. So some might see a fat woman and think, oh, this is only plus size clothing. And I would say this is probably my downfall and probably a problem for most emerging designers who have a niche. There are so many of us trying to change the industry, so many. You know, we shout it from the rooftops, but whether we are heard is dependent on algorithms and finance. I don't have the money to do big shoots with lots of models who represent lots of different body shapes. I so desperately want to do this, and you'll know I've made it when I start to do it. And because of the lack of financial backing from the industry for emerging designers, it also means we have no budget for marketing. I hate social media, as you all know, but it is the only way that I can get my work out there. It can make getting the message of size inclusivity across to people really hard. I get a lot of messages like, can we see it on this body shape? And I'm like, I would love to. I can't afford it. I only model because I am free. I don't want to model, but I exploit myself because I don't have a budget. So I bet some people will watch this and go, oh, what a hypocrite. How can she call herself size inclusive when she only shows one body type? And it is in education like this that I hope to make up for that fact. I would say those are the cons for size inclusivity from an economic point of view and from a designer's point of view. Part 4, plain old fat phobia. But compared to size inclusivity, standard sizing is still losing. We have 3 problems now: no universal body, different fit model for every brand, and lack of accessibility. So what's standard sizing's 4th problem? It's quite simple actually. It's just plain old fat phobia. The fashion industry doesn't see fat people as valuable. It sees your money, not worth its time. The global plus size fashion industry is worth over $300 billion as of 2024. $300 billion. We are seeing a huge scale back of representation and sizes in store and on the runways. In September 2025, New York Fashion Week had 46 plus size looks out of an overall, wait for it, 4,680 looks on the runway. That's 1%. In the US, the average size is 16 to 18. Let that sink in. But don't worry, guys, it's on the up, because in February of 2025, there were 23 plus size models for New York Fashion Week. It's just abysmal. Designers don't want to cater to us. They don't see us in their vision. Their clothes won't suit us, blah, 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 blah. Remember how I said last week that the concept of wearing clothes that flatter your body is fatphobic? Yeah, this is what I mean. What do you mean you can't see a fat woman in a flowing silk dress? Or a structured corset with ridiculous hip padding? Like, come on, we can serve a look. Like, just admit you don't understand our bodies or that you just hate us. Which one is it? I'll take my answer in the parking lot. I find it really difficult as a designer who admires brands like Schiaparelli to watch them never have a plus size person in their shows, because I know that I would, like, a fat woman would absolutely eat up some of Daniel Roseberry's designs. So I have a very conflicting relationship as a designer with fashion, because half of me appreciates the craftsmanship, everything that goes into that design, the magnitude of the show, the beauty, all of that kind of stuff. But then the other half of me, who is a fat woman, is like, yeah, but where's your fat women? So I'm very torn when it comes to Fashion Week. Half of me is very engaged in certain shows, but for the majority of it, I couldn't care less because the representation just isn't there. And so to that person who said that made to measure is not the solution, I mean, whether you meant it's because it's not necessarily accessible to all right now, fair enough. But in any other way, I'm sorry, I just don't understand how you could think that. Size inclusivity is about the clothes fitting you, not the other way around. There's this common myth that we have to fit into our clothes and that the clothes shouldn't fit our body, because it's so easy to change the sizing of clothes. It's not easy to change the size of your body. And as a brand who has a size inclusive model, I want to say 85% of my sales are made to measure. And my returning customers come back to me because of the made to measure, because the clothes, obviously, like the craftsmanship and the quality of the fabrics, but the main bit is they come back because the clothes fit and they feel confident in it. I haven't brought fast fashion in, I want to say, about 5 years now. And the last 3 years, I have really only been wearing the clothes that I make. And when I tell you, the way that I view my body is completely different to how I used to view it 4 or 5 years ago. It's wild. You know, I put on a silk dress and I feel just absolutely so confident. I know that it fits me. I know that it flows with my body. It's not until some asshole on the internet gets fatphobic that I then start to, you know, that doubt starts to creep back in. I had a customer once say that she always sees me in my Rowan dress, which is what I'm wearing today. And she goes, that must be the most comfortable dress because it's all I see you wear. And I'm like, it is. It is. I love wearing this dress because it is so comfortable on my body, which is why, going back to that person who said that made to measure is not the solution, it is. Because not only does it offer clothing to everyone, it makes people feel good about their bodies. And surely, at the end of the day, in the fat acceptance movement, that's what we want to be doing. We want to make sure that everyone is happy or at least neutral with their body and they are not at war with it. If we can alleviate that through clothing, surely we should do that. From a sustainable standpoint as well, made to measure clothing is great, because if something fits you, it's going to last longer in your wardrobe. You're going to have it for longer because it fits you. Like, there's so many pros to made to measure. Obviously, you have the con of it is a privilege, it is something you have to invest in. You do have, if you can't invest in it, then you have to invest in the skills, the basic sewing skills, and you have to invest your time. But the mental side of size inclusivity alleviates so many problems, because again, size inclusivity and fat acceptance go hand in hand with race, disabilities, misogyny, the environment. So what can you do as a consumer? Well, firstly, I think we should stop celebrating the bare minimum from brands. So if you genuinely want the industry to change and you want it to be more reflective of the society that we live in today, then you need to start calling brands out. Work does not fall on you as a consumer. It is mainly up to industry professionals like myself to be making change. And that is something that I am trying desperately to do at Haus Dahlia. I get a lot of pushback online for being, you know, size inclusive, for being fat positive, all of that kind of stuff. But it is messages from my clients who say that their clothes fit them like a dream that keeps me going, because I know that what I'm doing is the right thing. I know that this is where the fashion industry is supposed to go. If we want the industry to survive, if we want craftsmanship and quality materials to survive, then this is what industry people need to be doing. We need to be advocating for size inclusivity. I hope everything I said has given you some insight into fashion and size inclusivity. Thank you for spending some time with me today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. If you have any questions about this, obviously pop them in the comments and I'll do my best to explain anything that I've said here today. Yeah, and I will see you in the next video. I'm in Wales right now and I'm currently touching grass. Well, I hope I am. I hope my phone is off and I'm not doing anything apart from touching some Welsh grass. So yeah, I hope I've seen some sheep. I'm very excited to see some animals. There isn't a pigeon. So yeah, very much looking forward to Wales and I hope I'm having a wonderful time. And I can't wait to show you a bit of what we get up to while we are there. Anyway, I will say goodbye and I will see you next time. See you later, my lovelies. I do offer standard sizing, by the way. I have always meant to extend it, but then I got to a point in the middle of last year where I was like, no one's buying standard sizing, what's the point? I am still very tempted to just completely get rid of my standard sizing and be made to measure only. But so yeah.